Alright, good afternoon everybody, or good evening, wherever you happen to be. Tonight we're going to be making some beef stew, because, the seasons are kind of changing, and it's just kind of time to, try some new things. I haven't really made beef stew before. I've had it a few times. It's good. I just never quite got around to making it myself. So, we're going to be starting off with just the way you normally start, I suppose. The recipe I'm using is from The Joy of Cooking. I'm making a few small modifications because I don't do potato in my meals. So we're going to be replacing those with parsnips, I think. Apparently parsnips make pretty good potato substitutes. So we're going to give that a try. But that's not for a little ways. So first we've got to get out our stew meat, and for this I just got the pre-cut stuff from the local supermarket because that's what I was able to get quickly. And so I've got about 2 pounds of it, and see what we can do here. I'm supposed to lay this out and pat it dry. Then later on, because this is going to take a couple of hours to boil and simmer. So later on, I think that I'll probably make some biscuits while this is cooking. Alright, so we've got about 2 pounds of stew meat here. It's all pre-cut. So we get this out into a nice single layer, best as I can. Alright, let's grab some paper towels. I'll be patting these dry. Let's see, season with, blah blah blah. Trim, pat dry, cut into cubes. Not aiming to get these fully dry, just kind of reduce any residual moisture that they have from. Of course, I'm not going to really bother too much with getting them flipped over and everything. I think that it will be okay. Thought that might have been a little bit of paper towel, but it wasn't. Alright, so now what we're going to do is we're going to grab our herbs, which for this I'm using some oregano. I went out and I got some thyme today because my thyme plant died. Then I was going to grab some basil. It does specify dried basil. I'm not entirely certain I've got any dried basil left. I think I used it all up. But I could be wrong. I've been wrong about these things before. Apparently I've got a lot of tarragon. Yeah, I don't see basil. Got cloves. But I think we'll just go with this. So I'm going to grab the oregano. I'm going to grab my thyme. We're just going to be doing just seasoning these. So we'll just be sprinkling it across with some salt and pepper. I do like to season things fairly generously. I think that most people are too sparse with their seasoning. They under-season. Boy, these lift and peel things are supposed to be, really easy to pop off, but it has not been my experience lately. I don't know if they made a change to the glue that holds them on or what. I know I don't need to pull everything off, but I like to. Alright. Pop this back on and just lightly sprinkle the thyme. And I'm fine getting some on the cutting board. I'm going to be turning these over as well. Alright, we'll be using that later, and we'll be using the oregano later as well. Now we'll just grab the salt. And we're going to get about, let's see, it looks like about a half teaspoon it says. And again, I don't really care if I go a little bit overboard with this. I do generally think that, like I just said, I do generally think that people under-season rather than over-season. So we've got our salt, and I'll grab some pepper. All right. So there we go. That's that reasonably well seasoned, at least on one side. And we're going to be getting a little bowl here, it looks like. Slide this over just a little bit. We're going to grab some flour. We're going to be dredging this in the flour. Mix these around, try and make sure that seasoning is kind of spread around them. All right. And we'll just dredge them in here. The bowl isn't really big enough to fit them all at once, so once I've mixed them around thoroughly, I'm just pulling them out and putting them on the cutting board again. I think this will just add some texture and help make everything better. So the recipe I'm using for this is kind of a combination of the Joy of Cooking, which is what I'm primarily referencing. But also I did a lot of reading into Julia Childs' recipe last night. And so I'm kind of taking some of the aspects that she talked about and incorporating that in here as well. But it is primarily coming from Joy of Cooking. So that's why I linked a version of the Joy of Cooking recipe in the video description. I need to add a little bit more flour here. Just try and make sure that all these pieces are covered. Doesn't need to be perfect, but it will help with the texture if they're mostly covered. I'm shaking off any excess. So we don't need any extra flour in our mixture. Because we'll be able to add our own flour later. I know we're going to be using, I can't remember what the term for it is. Oh, kneaded butter. That's what it is. Kneaded butter, which is essentially just butter and flour. Yeah, butter and flour. They mix together in a 1-to-1 ratio in order to add it serves as a thickener in your stew, and it kind of gives it a nice glossy sheen. So I know we'll be doing that kind of towards the end in like 2 hours. This will be a long stream, that's why I'm starting it early. Because I would rather not have to wait to eat until 9 o'clock at night. Much rather be able to eat earlier. Alright, I'm gonna go wash off my hands. Alright, let's see here. Next up is we're going to be moving over to the stove. So let me swap over there on the cameras. Alright, so here we are. I did change out my camera a little bit this week. I've changed it up so that hopefully it's a little bit easier to see things, and I replaced the camera software so hopefully it's a little bit more stable. Alright, and that's probably not a great angle to kind of see what I'm doing here. Let's see here. I could just move it over onto this other burner. Let's do it on this front one because that's my preferred burner. Let's see if I can move this. Come on. Go where I want you to go. Alright. So it's not the best view in the world. I really need to get something that lets me look straight down from on top, but it's better. And so on this, we're going to be adding in, looks like, just some nice olive oil. A couple tablespoons of olive oil. We're going to get this nice and hot. Yeah, medium-high heat there. Get a couple tablespoons of oil in there. And we're gonna just get this nice and hot, and then we're going to be browning our beef, because browned beef is a good thing to have because it tastes good and all of that other good stuff. All right, just waiting for that to get a little bit warm. We've got our beef ready. this is getting pretty close. The oil is getting really shimmery. Yep. All right. All right. Making sure I know where I'm going. I've got our prepared beef right here. I'll go ahead and just drop in the first batch. Just like that. I could probably add a little bit more in there too. It says to avoid crowding, but this doesn't seem too bad to me. All right, and while that's kind of going, let's see here. Oh, I don't think I actually set up my dual cameras this time because I swapped my methodology. All right, we'll do these one at a time then. And I'll start making sure that I've got everything ready. I'm going to grab an onion and some carrots and some celery and some garlic. And we'll be using those in a minute or two in order to add in here as part of our base. That thyme in there is very, very delicious smelling. You want to be able to smell what I'm smelling right now? Go grab some thyme out of your cabinet and give it a bit of a whiff, and that's going to be pretty close. I'm smelling a lot of thyme. While that cooks over on the other side of the kitchen, I'm just quickly prepping an onion and some other stuff so that I can get those chopped up. Haven't actually gotten any of the chopping bits yet. I'm just making sure that I've got them prepped for the chopping. You know, all the boring stuff that they never show in cooking videos. And ideally you'd have like a wooden spoon or something. I've got a wooden thing somewhere, I just don't remember where I put it. And the plastic thing was the plastic stirrer was the first thing that came to hand, and it's perfectly fine for this application. From over here on the other side of the kitchen, I can hear that those are probably about ready to be stirred again. This onion is giving me so much trouble. All right. that just go to black? Just glanced over at my computer, and yes, it did. Great. Not sure why it did that. Wonder if it... You know, you try something new. Oh, the application it was using crashed. That'll do it. Let me get that running again. Alright, I think there we go. That may happen again. I'm technically using a beta version of an app. And so it looks like it crashed after some time. My earlier testing was fine, so I'm hoping that's just a one-off thing. But we will see. Let's add a little bit more oil here. Let it drop the heat a little bit. This stuff is starting to burn. I'm going to just grab a plastic bowl, start dropping these into. We can get started with our next batch. At least the stuff on the bottom will be a fantastic fond for the stew, as we'll be making the stew in here as well. Alright, so we've got that. Let's get a little bit more oil in there because it's going to need it for this batch, and I think the other stuff just went with everything else. Alrighty. While that finishes off and it's going a little bit smoother now, so I'm just gonna slice up an onion. You've seen me do this plenty of times before. There's nothing particularly special about it, so I'm not showing it. Mostly because it's over here or it's over there and I'm over here, I guess. So. But you are not missing anything. I have no secrets of the universe that I am unveiling with my onion chopping. Unless it's the secret of how to not cry when slicing an onion, because I don't cry when I slice onions. Never have. Haven't started now. Don't ask me why, because I don't know. I suspect it's something to do with my contacts or the fact that I've got dry eyes, but I just don't. I'm going to get some garlic cloves. This calls for 1 onion and then 4 garlic cloves, which is part of the reason why I chose The Joy of Cooking over Julia Child. Julia Child only had 2 garlic cloves, and frankly that's just not nearly enough garlic. So I'm doing 4 garlic cloves. Which starts to approach, reasonable levels of garlic. And again, I'm not doing anything super special over here off camera, other than allowing my attention to waver from the pan where I can smell things are starting to burn a little bit. But that's okay, I can deal with that. I'll just finish off with this garlic. The whole smash the garlic before cutting it thing really makes a world of difference. Slap it with the side of your knife, then cut. And I'm just kind of rough chopping this garlic. It's going to end up simmering and getting really soft for a long time. So you'll see when I bring it over that I did not mince it incredibly finely. I just gave it a few rough chops. Alright, I think that this is just about done. There's a couple pieces that maybe need a little bit more time, but we're browning it for flavor. We're not browning it to cook it through. That's what it's going to be simmering for a couple of hours to do. I'm going to turn down the heat to off here. Killing the heat for a minute. Oh man, this thing died again. I'm gonna have to swap this out for my old method, aren't I? Alright, let me move the Dutch oven off so it doesn't keep burning. Let me fix the camera again. Yeah, it tells me it crashed again. Nice of it to tell me after it's already crashed. And we'll go back to the way I was doing it before. See if I can get that to actually properly show up. There we go. Yeah. It's got a bit of a delay. It's not quite as good as the other way that I was using before. But if it works, and that's the important thing. Alright, so since I've taken the Dutch oven off the heat, let's pop this back over here to the cutting board. And as you can see, I've got my onion and I've got my garlic. It also wants us to use a carrot and some celery. So we're going to be taking all of these and dropping them all into the pot. Let's see here. Just looking through the instructions here, so I'm gonna they're all going at the same time, so I'm going to put them all into the same bowl. So I can drop them all in at the same time. Alrighty, and then we're going to grab some celery, which I've got some celery right here. Got a nice stalk of celery there, and I've got some carrots, which I thought it'd be kind of fun to use some rainbow carrots in order to add a little bit of extra color. So I'm gonna rinse those off and then rinse off the celery. If I can figure out how to get this package open. I think we'll go with the purple, yellow, orange, and white ones, which I guess are all the colors there are. That should probably equal about 1 carrot, right? They say that they're pre-washed, but I always wash it anyway just to be on the safe side. Because you never know what can get into those supply lines. And we're going to wash off the celery as well, which does not come pre-washed, so probably still has all sorts of dust and debris on it from the fields. Those celery fields where the celery roams free. You always make sure you should always make sure you get the free range celery. It just has that extra bit of taste and crunch to it, as opposed to the stuff that they grow in big warehouses with stalks of celery penned against each other. They say that you can't taste the difference, but I say you can. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and kind of cut this up. Let's see, how finally did it say it needed to be cut? It just says chopped. Alright. So I'm going for between 1/4 and 1/2 inch per slice. At least until I kind of get towards the end here, and I'll chop that one up a little bit differently in a moment. Alrighty. There we go. And then as for these carrots, whoops. Alright, well that one's for the cat. I don't know if she likes carrots or not, but I don't know if carrots are good for cats. I really like the color on these because you have that really nice purple around the edges and then that just center of bright orange. That's pretty cool. Let's see what these look like on the inside. They're just yellow. They're nice and crisp. These are just white. I'm assuming if I cut into the orange one, it'll just be orange all the way through. Yep, just orange. I feel like I could probably add a few more there, though. Let me grab some more of those. Go with some more of those purple ones because those look cool. It looks like another orange one and another yellow one. wonder if all of the purple ones have that inside. Now it looks like the one we had first, well, it looks like this one does as well, but it's a lot smaller. And I lost another piece of the purple one. I guess those are just the ones that are most likely to get away. It's that natural purple camouflage. This one's mostly purple all the way through. Kind of interesting. Alright, so I'm going to bring this, let's see, am I forgetting anything? I don't think I am. Alright. So we're going to swap this all back over to the stovetop. And then from here, put this back on the heat. That's a little bit hot. Stick that on medium, I think. Just reducing the heat a little bit. Where did I put my oil? I put it right, oh, it's over here. Couple more tablespoons of oil. And we're going to go ahead and just add all of these. Alrighty. We're just going to be cooking these until the onions start to get soft. I don't think will take that long. Once the onions are soft, we're going to be putting in the meat. Again, we're going to be putting a couple bay leaves, which I have up here. Alright, got those right there. Some more of the thyme and oregano. I might toss in a couple sprigs of basil as well, which I'll probably chop up a little bit. Some salt, pepper, and then we're going to be putting in a few cups of wine, and I actually have some Cabernet Sauvignon to do with this. I think this one's got an actual cork. I'm not great with wine, as I think I have discussed before. But I'll get my bottle opener and see if I can get this thing open. Because I really feel like my opening this thing would probably be a good start to the rest. Let's see, bottle opener. Bottle opener. And I appear to just be chewing through the cork, which I don't think is how that's supposed to go. I know this is the absolutely riveting content that everyone is here for. Me struggling to open a wine bottle while sauteing onions. Alright, I think that'll do it. He says, struggling to pull the cork out. All this drama is happening like, oh, there it goes, 3 inches off camera. Yeah, I really hope I've got enough wine here. I was looking at it last night and I was like, oh yeah, that's plenty of wine. No, I'm not sure. If I have to supplement, I'll supplement with some chicken stock, because that's kind of what's recommended. I've just let the wine, I've decorked the wine. I'm just letting it kind of air out for a moment while we finish getting these all ready. Yeah, I'm liking how the onions are looking, so I'm going to go ahead and add in that meat again. Let's see here. Add the meat, which is right here. Add in a couple bay leaves. Got 1 bay leaf, 2 bay leaves. And then some of our dried herbs. So I've got my thyme, which is basically awesome. Alright, nice amount of thyme there. I'm putting in my oregano. Nice amount of oregano there. Then some salt and pepper. Got my box of salt. Just adding a nice big pinch there. Maybe another nice big pinch. Not too concerned about this thing being too salty. Then of course our pepper here. Nice few twists of that. Now we're going to go ahead and add in our wine. Yeah, we should have enough here. Actually, I've still got plenty to spare. We're just going to make sure that all of our meat is mostly covered. We're going to bring that up to a boil. Shouldn't take too long. Once it's boiling, we're going to reduce the heat down to a simmer, and we're going to cover it and just let it sit for about 1.5 to 2 hours, somewhere in that general range. And while that happens, I think I'm going to make probably biscuits. Probably biscuits. So while I wait for that, I'm going to go ahead and just clean up my workspace a little bit. So if anyone's got any other suggestions for what to do, yeah, I'm more than happy to hear them. I have some French bread already. I didn't make it, I bought it. Because bread's one of those things that I just didn't feel like I had time today for. But if there are suggestions on what else to make and serve with it, I was thinking maybe, I don't know, maybe rice. My partner insists that rice is never to be served with stew. I don't know if I quite agree with that. I think that rice is a great base for basically anything, and stew you're kind of supposed to serve with potatoes, and if you aren't having potatoes, you might as well have rice. But I think that biscuits are a very good thing to have on there, or to have in there, because biscuits and stew sounds like a kind of a really nice beginning of fall treat. And I like my treats. Alright, let me check on this. Let's see how this is going. Looks like we're starting to get it up to a bit of a simmer here. Not quite up to the boil I was looking for. Make sure my aromatics are fully submerged. Probably helps if I don't have the main heat source being only underneath one side of the pot. Like it'd be a little bit more central. But it is one of the great things about cast iron is that over time it will heat up across the entire bottom. Still just a simmer. I'm going to bring up the heat a little bit to bring everything kind of up. I'm going to make sure that the bottom deglazed, so we have that nice fond that we created when we were browning the meat. That's now fully incorporated in. It's part of why you'd use something like wine as opposed to like chicken stock, or I don't recommend using canned beef stock, pre-bought store-made beef stock, because there's not actually a ton of beef in it. A lot of it's just flavoring. Chicken stock takes a lot less time to prepare, so it's generally more of the real thing. Alright, we're gonna let that bubble for a moment or two, and then I'm gonna just start flipping through Joy Cooking, see what they say about biscuits here, because I didn't pick out a recipe ahead of time. I was just kind of thinking about it on the fly. Biscuits. I don't know that I have buttermilk to do buttermilk biscuits. Probably do drop biscuits. Page 639. That's the thing about Joy Cooking. They have recipes for essentially everything. See, quick drop biscuits. No kneading or rolling necessary. The biscuits are very palatable but less shapely unless you drop them into muffin tins. I mean, I'm okay with that, and I've actually got muffin tins, so I can drop them into muffin tins. So you prepare rolled biscuits, which looks completely doable. Yeah, I'll kind of go over how I look at a recipe here in a moment after this is ready. I think that's getting pretty good. It's not quite full boiling, but another few seconds there. I think we'll get there. Alright, so for this we're just going to be setting it aside for, I'm going to say about an hour and a half. So I'm actually going to, let me pull up that timer. Because I can actually do that. I can put that on screen. Timer, 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 timer. There we go, timer. So I'm going to set this for 1.5 hours, and that's when we're going to check on this next. If my timer actually wants to load. Alright, I think that we are now officially boiling. Give everything a bit of a stir. Make sure that all my aromatics and everything are under the level of the wine. And you could do this with chicken stock as well if you don't have this much wine on hand, or you just feel like doing it that way. I just think that this will be nice and rich, and it was an option, so I decided to take it. All right, so we're gonna turn down the heat to a simmer. Gonna kind of cover it here. Put this away. Maybe give a quick wipe off of the top of my oven here, so that just because I notice it's looking a little bit dusty, which happens when you have it set out on a shelf. There we go. All right, and so that's going to be there for about another hour and a half. I guess my timer never decided to load. That's disappointing. I like being able to just pop that up and be like, look. There we go. Alright, we're going to do this for 90 minutes. I am starting that. And let's throw that up onto the screen. Or not, because it's not actually showing it. What the heck? Why is that happening? I really feel like this is about half of what I do. It's just... it's a little bit of cooking, and it's a lot of me being like, why isn't this not working the way I want it to work? You know, it's just kind of how it is. Hopefully that's what everyone expects. Alright, well, no timer, I guess, because that's not working. So instead, we're just going to transition back over here to the cutting board, where we'll be for at least a little while. And now the stew's kind of going. We've got about another hour and a half, and I should probably set a timer for that. Clocks, 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 clock. So we're going to set a timer for 1 hour, 30 minutes. We're going to start that right now. We're going to give that a label of stew. Alright. So, 1 hour, 30 minutes. And that's when we'll check on our stew. Alright, so for the biscuits that we'll be making, that was over here. I just looked it up. I can't remember the page. So yeah, normally when I'm looking for a recipe, I'll start off by kind of figuring out where I want to go, and then I'll consult a bunch of different cookbooks. So in this case, I'm looking at Joy Cooking. We're going to look at the quick drop ones, 639. So quick drop biscuits right here. So Joy Cooking has basically everything that you could possibly feel like ever cooking. They've got it all. In the event that they don't have something or you don't want to do it that way, you know, there are some other options. So let's take a look at America's Test Kitchen Complete Cooking for Two cookbook. I feel like they might have something in here. Probably quick breads, I'm thinking. So it could be underneath cookies, cakes, and custards, I suppose. They do have simple drop biscuits. All right, so and they've actually got a couple different variations. So we can have it with fresh herbs, black pepper and bacon, rosemary and parmesan, which actually sounds pretty darn good to me. They just kind of talk about how to do that. I think that this is pretty similar to. So this uses buttermilk, which I don't think I have. If I do have buttermilk, obviously that's pretty good. I do not have buttermilk. I have whipping cream, but no buttermilk. So anything that uses buttermilk is probably not going to work. Now you can actually kind of make buttermilk. You take milk and then you add in vinegar. So I can do a substitute with, I have almond milk and I have vinegar, so I can do a substitute that way, and that actually comes out pretty close to buttermilk. So this could actually be pretty good. Although this recipe only makes 4 biscuits, and I don't know why you would even bother making only 4 biscuits. Normally, you know, when I'm baking, even if I know that I'm only going to be making stuff for 2 people, I will make extras so that I can have leftovers later. So that's where I can look at a different one. So this is the Cook's Illustrated Science of Good Cooking. And then for here, I'm just going to check in the back because they've got a lot of different recipes. Biscuits, biscuits, biscuits. This is what I do basically anytime I ever do any sort of stream or any baking. I've done a lot of research ahead of time to at least kind of figure out which direction I go. And it doesn't mean I necessarily read the recipe or remember it very well, but I at least, you know, did it. So this is a little bit better. So this is 12 biscuits. So it uses flour, baking powder, baking soda, sugar, salt, buttermilk. So we again have to make our buttermilk. So unsalted butter, melted and cooled slightly. So we need to melt our butter. Not a big deal. Yeah, this looks pretty decent. So I like this one. And I actually think that dropping these into... How do these look? Does it have any pictures? Don't see any pictures. Yeah, I'm just trying to read along here. Yeah, I think that these would be pretty good. But let's check another source or two. And I don't think that Kenji Lopez has a bunch of baked stuff inside his Food Lab book, which is fantastic. I recommend highly, but sometimes it's worth checking. Pretty sure he doesn't, but he might have. You just double check, because there are a few recipes that he includes as a secondary thing to other recipes, and I feel like biscuits might have been one of those. But hey, I'm mostly just killing time for another 2 hours anyway, so yeah, look at that, 163. Until we have a more to do with the stew, and I could just stick everything back onto the music, but I kind of feel like making something else, and this seems like a good way to do it. Alright, so this uses buttermilk and sour cream. I'm pretty certain, I know I don't have sour cream anymore, but I do have Greek yogurt, which actually works out pretty well. I actually kind of like this one too. This is super flaky. Uses my food processor, which I always like that. I always like using my food processor. Lots of folding, though. I don't know if I really feel like doing a ton of folding today. It's kind of talky. So the folding is definitely the reason you would do this. And folding does give you fantastic results. I just don't know that I really feel like it. Oh look, easy cream biscuits if you don't want to bother with all that folding and shaping. And that's actually using heavy cream, which I've got. Flour, baking soda, large bowl, 2 tablespoons. Need rolling, blah blah blah. Round biscuit cutter. I don't have a biscuit cutter. You're supposed to use a biscuit cutter to get the edges nice and smooth, so it actually puffs up. If you use a lot of people use a glass, and that will pinch the sides shut, and it won't properly rise. But I could probably cut these out pretty easily. I mean, essentially all a biscuit cutter is just a round knife that you press down into it, right? So this is essentially scones without the sugar. Oh yeah, look, cream scones. Add 3 tablespoons of sugar to the dry mixture in step 1. There we go. Yeah, I think I'm going to do this one, just because I think I like the way that this is set up. So I'm going to take a quick pause here to go ahead and gather some ingredients. I'm going to pop you back over onto the oven, or to the stove view, just for a couple minutes. Well, actually, I'll just leave it on here. I just need to make sure I've got a couple of these ingredients. I'm going to go ahead and grab those, and I will see you guys in a couple minutes. Alright, I'm back. Had to make sure I could find my rolling pin. I got a roll, so I actually didn't have a rolling pin up until a few days ago. I've done a lot of making do with a bunch of other techniques to try and roll stuff out. But I wanted to make sure I knew where that was. I found it, gave it a quick wash, so it should be good there. So now we'll just kind of start getting started. We're going to use a nice bowl. So I'm going to grab my last nice glass bowl because somehow managed to use the others already. Put it on my scale, which I need to wipe the top off of at some point. And we're going to be doing, this is in ounces, so ounces, about 2 cups worth of flour. Should be 10 ounces. Almost there. There we go, 10 ounces exactly. I always get this little moment of like triumph whenever I get really close to exactly where it's supposed to be. Then when it actually hits that, I'm like, yes! It's the little things that keep me happy. Alright, then a tablespoon of baking powder, which I of course have underneath a couple of other things, so grab that. I really need to clean up this. I just cleaned up and reorganized all my baking stuff, and now it's all messy again. It's kind of how it is. It's a never-ending battle. Where did I put my tablespoon? No, it's teaspoon. Tablespoon, tablespoon, tablespoon. It's clearly time for me to reorganize again. Yep, there's my tablespoon. It's still in my dishwasher. Should probably explain why it wasn't where I thought it was. Alright, and I've also got the half tablespoon because I don't think the tablespoon's going to fit inside. It'll fit. But I don't have nearly enough baking powder in there for it. Yeah, even with that little bit that I just missed and dumped in. Which is fine, I'm not too concerned about a little bit extra. Don't have enough there. Let's see, baking powder. Luckily, I do have another fresh one. Got a tablespoon of that. And 3/4 teaspoon of salt. So now I can grab my teaspoon. So I'll just grab all these measuring things. Got my salt right here. Half, and then this is 1/4 teaspoon, so together those probably make 1/3 if I'm remembering my mathematics correctly. And 4 tablespoons of unsalted butter melted. Oh, I forgot about that melted bit. I've got 3 tablespoons there, and here's another stick, so I will definitely have enough. I just heard something that sounded like something boiled over. So I'm going to just go quickly check on that stew. Yeah, it's looking okay. Just apparently built up enough steam to cause a minor drip. Alright. Grab these, stick these in a... Well, I guess I would have put those in that little bowl if I hadn't just used that little bowl for something else. So I will put those into a ramekin. So that's 3 tablespoons. Let's get a 1/4 tablespoon in there. Toss this back in the fridge. Toss this into the microwave. The microwave, where I shall use the power of electromagnetic radiation to do my bidding and to warm my butter. And I'm just gonna, let's see, this has a soften melt thing for butter. Melt butter. Half a stick, sure, why not? Whisk to combine all of these. Where did my whisk go? I thought it was right here. It is right there. Just underneath something. So we'll just make sure all of this is nicely whisked up. So 2 tablespoons of milk, so half the melted butter and then the cream. And then looks like the rest of the butter will be brushing on top. So since we'll be quickly getting to that point, let me get a few of these things out of the way. Boy, I really need more counter space. I never have enough counter space. I'm going to move this away. I'll put it next to the wine. Hopefully far enough away from the heat to not wreck the book. Alright. We're going to probably flour this surface in a moment. I'll be eventually transferring this onto a parchment lined baking sheet, but that's not for a little bit. Alright. That melted butter is extremely hot. I'm regretting picking that up the way I did, as if it wasn't actually hot or melted, when in fact it was both of those things. I suppose that's just how it goes sometimes. We can get this to melt the rest of this in there. Doing it slowly. Alright, while it finishes melting in, I'm going to grab the heavy cream. And one of my measuring cups, we're going to be putting in 1 1/4 cups of heavy cream. One cup. And up to the 1/4 cup mark, which are fortunately printed on the outside as well. Alrighty. let's see about this butter here. That appears to have melted through, so we should be good there. Grab about half a tablespoon, another half. There we go. Keep the rest of that in reserve. While I bemoan the lack of space. And I guess we didn't actually need this baking soda, so I'll put that away before it gets in my way even more. And let's see, I don't see my wooden spoon, so we'll just use this. We'll just kind of loosely stir this together. We're just trying to get everything all combined. I get a nice dough. That we can then work with and knead. I think that's going to be pretty good to start with. Let's see if we can get this into we can work this into a nice ball. You can tell this requires a lot of concentration. Or it's just that there's not a whole lot to really talk about while this is going on. I think this is technically the step that they said I should do on a floured surface. Oh well. Alright. That's pretty good. What's the next step? Roll it out into an 8-inch square, 3/4 of an inch thick. I don't know about an 8-inch square, mostly because I don't think I have the space for that. But let me sprinkle a little bit of flour out here and we'll see what we can get. As soon as I get rid of that butter off my hands so that I don't get a ton of butter inside the flour container. Yeah, it seems to be working pretty well. Of course, I say that and that's when it starts to stick a little bit. I'm going to trim off some of these edges here to reincorporate them in to help everything be a little bit straighter. I know it's not perfect, I've got a plan for that. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to add a fold. Should be at least a little bit of lamination that goes on because of that. Not a lot, but a little. And I think that most importantly, that should mean that this is a lot squarer than it was. Grab a little bit more flour. All right, so we've got this in an approximate square. It's probably a little bit less than 3/4 of an inch thick, but that's fine. So we're going to go ahead and start cutting these out. And now, I know it says circles. I don't really, well, we'll see how well I can cut out circles. How's that? Let's get started by grabbing something that's kind of circular and roughly the right size. I'm going to grab a glass. This is just for marking it out. I'm just putting a light impression in so that I know where to cut. Taking care not to actually press down too hard. So I think I could probably put one in there-ish, yeah. And then we'll see how much is left, and I might be able to make another couple if I roll those out. So now we just trace around the impressions. And voila. One round biscuit. I actually do not know exactly how well this is going to work. So I look forward to seeing as soon as these come out of the oven. definitely thinking that they're going to work better than if I were pressing down with a cup, because that crimps the sides. You can see here that I did not crimp the sides at all. So that should allow these to expand and rise as they normally ought to. We will see. I know that having that lamination in there means that there's going to be a couple points where stuff puffs up unequally, but that's also fine. I think that the actual best biscuits are the ones that don't look perfect. I want to see a little bit of variation in my biscuits. I don't like it when food comes out looking like it was prepped in a mass kitchen or something, in a factory. Got nothing against factory food necessarily, it's just when I'm cooking I prefer things to either look completely impeccable in, you know, a very deliberate way, or which is not the same as, you know, factory produced, because a lot of factory produced stuff I don't think looks deliberate in a specific way. Hard for me to explain. I like when things look homemade. I guess that's probably the best way of saying it. It's getting difficult to see the impression here, so I'm kind of guessing. Alright, I'm going to put these onto a parchment lined baking sheet, which means I should probably grab a parchment lined baking sheet. Parchment paper. Parchment paper. And I'm just going to trim up this paper. Because that does not fit my current sheet. We'll be brushing these with the butter before we put them in the oven. Let's see if we can get any more biscuits out of that first. Just gonna quickly knead this back into a cohesive bowl or ball. Maybe grab a little bit more flour. Alrighty. And same thing, we're just going to use the same impressioning trick. And it looks like we can easily get another 3 out of this. And I could probably get another 1 or 2, but at a certain point, you know, law of diminishing returns. Alright, I'm going to drop these onto the baking sheet as well. Shifting a couple things around on it. I think that'll probably be pretty good. I don't think I could fit much more onto that sheet. I still have plenty of dough, so is there anything else I can do with biscuit dough? Feels like there should be. I could make more biscuits, I suppose. Let me get my pastry brush. I probably should have preheated the oven now that I'm, at this step here. I should probably have thought of that a few steps ago. Let me quickly do that. I'm going to move the French baguette out of it. And set it to, looks like 425. And I'm also going to put a cork in this wine while I'm over here, because leaving it out is probably not good for it. Alright. Alright, so that's going to take a minute or two to preheat, and I'm going to try and figure out what to do with this biscuit dough. Because I really feel like there's something else I could do with it. There's not really a ton more space on this. What could I do with biscuit dough? I could add some, well, trying to add sugar to it now to make scones would probably not really work. Let's see here, what to do. I will ask Google. Google will be able to tell me what to do, because Google knows everything. What to do with biscuit dough? Crispy cinnamon sugar biscuit bites. That sounds pretty good. BuzzFeed has lots of stuff, of course. It suggests waffles or garlic knots. or donuts or cheesesteaks. I don't really feel like any of those. It does suggest chicken and dumplings, which sounds pretty good, but probably not. Oh, cheesy pizza pull-apart bread. I mean, I'm always a fan of anything that's cheesy, pizza-y, pull-apart, or bread, so that basically hits me on every possible level. Or I could just do miniature cinnamon rolls, which is probably a pretty solid solution. Let's see here, let me just double check. I think I know how they're going to tell me to make it. Yeah, so it's just melted butter, cinnamon sugar, roll it, slice it, bake it. Yeah, let's do that. That's a good way to do it. And I'll give the oven an extra couple minutes to heat up as well. And it'll make my partner happy because she really likes cinnamon rolls. I mean, I'm not saying that I don't like cinnamon rolls, because I definitely do. We'll go ahead and get this nicely rolled out. I'm just working here to make it as square-ish as possible. Or it doesn't even need to be square-ish, I just want it more square-ish. Did I just say that I didn't need it to be something and then I immediately said that I just wanted it to be that thing? I think I did. Well, I'd definitely like to be able to talk in a sensible manner. That ship's probably sailed. So we're going to get this bit out thinner than we did for the biscuits. Which means I get to actually use this new function of my rolling pin, because it's the first time I've really used this rolling pin, so I'm going to choose a much thinner guide here, and I'm going to say, oh, 1/6 of an inch. 1/6 of an inch sounds pretty good to me. That seems like it'll be nice and thin, and will let me have a pretty solid amount of butter and cinnamon sugar on it. Oh yeah, that immediately helps make everything a lot thinner. It's nice to have those guides. I swear, my cat walks in a room and I immediately find one of her hairs on this. There we go. Okay, so we're going to brush this with butter. Where did I just put the others? The oven just finished preheating, so I should probably go ahead and pop those biscuits in as well. I'll go ahead and pop those biscuits into the oven for about 15 minutes. So I'll have to rotate the tray halfway through. So about 7:42 my time is when it'll be done, and I'll rotate it at 7:35 or so. Alright, so got that coated in butter. Just grab the cinnamon sugar. We're going to go ahead and roll it going that way. These are obviously mini cinnamon roll biscuits. Still be a decent size, but definitely not huge. Alright, and then trim off this end here. See how we get that nice swirl in there? I could probably get that a little bit tighter, but I think that this will be fine. That one's probably too thin. I think the next one's thicker. All right. So little mini cinnamon rolls. I'll brush the tops of those with probably some more butter once they're on the baking sheet, and then give them another sprinkle of cinnamon sugar. Let's grab that baking sheet. Grab a little bit more parchment paper. I'm not going to bother trimming this one. This will be fine. They give these some room to expand. I don't know how much they really will. Giving them room is always better than not giving them enough room. All right. Hopefully the butter and cinnamon sugar will kind of make up for the fact that I'm not really planning on making any frosting for these. They're really just using up extra biscuit dough. I have no idea how well they're really going to turn out. If they turn out well, then that's fantastic. And if they don't turn out at all, I haven't really lost anything. Yep, that's where the cinnamon sugar is. All right. So I think those look pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and toss those onto the bottom shelf of my oven. Cool. All right. How much longer do we have on that timer? 37 minutes. All right. I'm just gonna kind of clean up now, I think. I don't really have anything else to make. If I make too much, then there's not enough left later to do. So I'm just gonna clean up for a little bit. Probably gonna throw on the music and just kind of clean up. as we start getting ready for the biscuits to come out, I was just kind of going over the stew. So next up we're going to do some more carrots and some parsnips, and I was going to start getting those ready. For the carrots, again, we're just going to keep using these rainbow carrots because I think they look pretty awesome. So I'm going to be using those. And then I actually do have a couple of parsnips. So we'll be using these as well. I'll be peeling these up and cutting them up. I'm going to give them a quick wash. We should have the biscuits out in a minute, but just kind of getting a head start on the next thing because we're just about to the point where the stew is going to need to have the vegetables added, and then it cooks for a while longer. So actually the cinnamon rolls that we're making are going to end up being a nice snack while we wait for the stew to finish. I'm feeling very glad that I did not start the stream at my usual time, because otherwise it would currently be 9 o'clock at night, as opposed to 7:45 at night. I don't want to eat dinner too late. So I've got those. I'm going to grab a few handfuls of these. That's probably a pretty solid start. We should be just about time for those biscuits to come out. Check on those. I did rotate them halfway through. I think I'm going to rotate them back again for about another minute, because there's some over there on the end that were not quite even. So those have about another minute to go. Let's see, where did I put my peeler? I'll wait to do the peeling until after I have the biscuits out. Let me move this out of the way. Alrighty, now let's take a look and see about those biscuits. Yep, I am thinking that those look pretty darn good to me. They've got all of the things that I like to see in a biscuit. Very few of the things that I do not like to see in a biscuit, so I would say that that counts as a success. Nice and hot, so I'm gonna drop these on a plate. And by plate, I mean little, flat bowl. Hot, hot, hot. Very, very hot. Let's move this out of the way. Just going to check on these and just going to rotate the cinnamon rolls. Alrighty. And I'm going to grab a towel to place over around these. Kind of help keep the heat in and all that other good stuff. So I'm going to set these biscuits aside and I'm going to get started on these parsnips and on these carrots. Alright. So this I'm doing as a replacement for the potatoes. Obviously, if you're making stew, you can definitely use those potatoes. And in that case, you'd have, I think it's 6 regular potatoes, or boiling potatoes, which are smaller than like a big russet potato. You could probably also put in some sweet potatoes if you wanted to. But I prefer, I was afraid that the sweet potatoes were going to get soft, so I didn't go down that route. Alright, that one's done. Alrighty. Now let me just double check to make sure I know how chopped up these are supposed to be. Cut into chunks. Alright. Well, we can do that. Cut a couple of these chunks in half because that way they can actually fit inside people's mouths. Comfortably. Really need some power to get through some of these. Central core is pretty tough. Should probably got more parsnips. I feel like this is probably not quite enough. But I'm sure it will work out. There's plenty of other good stuff, I'm not too concerned. And then with these, I'm just probably going to be cutting these in half so that we get some nice big chunks. See, the inside of this one's green. So the purple ones clearly have some pretty cool color variations with them. I'm not very familiar with rainbow baby carrots, but I think that's pretty cool. It's okay, so it's green at one end, and so that's probably where the stem was. I think I'm going to grab some more carrots. I don't have more parsnips, but I do have more carrots. I think that more carrots is probably better here. In this particular situation. Should probably also check on those cinnamon rolls. Oh, yep, those are done. Alright, I'm just going to show them off here before I set them off to the side to cool. But I think that I'm really happy with how that turned out. They puffed up nicely, and they did all the things that I wanted them to do. Alright, carrots. More carrots. I will probably end up just putting in this whole bag, but I'll probably take another round after this. Oops, dropped one. Now remember, when you're cutting carrots, to be very careful, because apparently it takes, and I have not personally done this, but I've read in a couple of places that it takes the same amount of effort to cut or bite through a carrot that it does to cut or bite through a finger. So watch where your fingers are, because you can't necessarily depend on it being a lot harder to cut through your finger than a carrot. Now obviously I would sort of hope that you're probably using more judgment than just how much pressure you're putting on something to determine if you're cutting through a finger or not. Probably be able to feel it for one, or see it or whatever. But I know that people do slice off tips of fingers. So, and when you're cutting things that are hard, you've got a lot of pressure on the blade. If you don't know what you're doing with it, you can easily slice something that you did not mean to slice. So with all of this, I've been keeping my hand, kind of at the back of the carrot, or kind of at the end of the carrot, as I cut through over there, and I'm pretty careful about where I'm putting that pressure down, and I'm not exerting any lateral force. It would have to do a lot to slip out of my control. And that could still happen. Don't become complacent. But it's just less likely to. Alrighty, let's see here. Where are we standing? 15 more minutes until supposedly it would be ready. Let me check this here. Let me swap this back over just to show off how I'm checking this. Alright, so you're supposed to be checking this for when it's fork tender. So when the meat is fork tender, that's how you know that you're ready to move on to the next step. As I check in here, I think that meat is actually fork tender because it's just sinking straight in, absolutely zero problems. So I think that we are ready to move on to the next step a little bit sooner than originally expected. And that next step is to add in the carrots and parsnips that we just did. And then we're going to be covering that and cooking it until those are tender. Lots of things that we're just leaving until they're tender to get all that nice flavor out. Got our carrots that we're going in. More carrots going in. Now our parsnips. let's just get in here, stir these in. Probably going to add in some chicken stock here as well, just to increase the levels of the liquid a little bit, and to reduce the amount of wine overall in the final version. I think I've still got a little bit of chicken stock left. Yeah. Just try to dilute out that wine just a little bit now that we've soaked the beef in it for so long. That flavor is really going to come through, but I want to make sure that there's a little bit extra there as well. It's all about dimension of flavor. And then let's see here, I think I need to bring the heat back up and let this simmer again. Yeah. Alright. So we're going to be simmering this again for about another 35 minutes, so I'm going to increase the heat to bring it back up to a simmer. As soon as we get there, I'm going to pop the lid back on, and probably I'm probably going to kick this over onto music, and I don't seem to have my my timer isn't working, unfortunately, so that won't be there, but I will probably be back to check on this again at about 8:30 Central. Meantime, let's see. Can't quite pick that up yet. I'm going to take a look at these. Oops, probably should make sure that I've cleared a spot for those. I'm going to take a look at these cinnamon rolls, see how well they turned out. Alright, cinnamon rolls. Because cinnamon rolls are delicious. I'm just going to take this one here. They're still nice and warm. I really like the color along the top, which comes from the not only the butter we brushed on, but also that little bit of extra cinnamon sugar, which is kind of crystallized. The bottoms look pretty good. Yeah, the inside is nice and flaky. Got a nice amount of butter in there. Nice amount of cinnamon sugar. This is the end, so it has less than all the others, but there's still a nice amount in that. Yeah, I think I'm pretty happy with that. Yep. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and stick this back over onto the soothing music and just have it kind of watch the stove. I'm going to let it come up to simmer, then I'll cover it, and I'll check back in at about 8:30. It's about half an hour. So it's now been about half an hour, a little over. This is looking pretty good. Looks to me like that's ready. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this off of the heat. I'm going to move that skillet, and we're just going to push this back, take it off the heat, and let it cool for a moment while we make some kneaded butter, which is going to be an important component of this. Move this. Ooh, that's really hot. Probably too hot. This over there. Transition along. And let me pull the French bread that I just put in the oven a few minutes ago. I'm going to pull that out so it can kind of cool down a little bit. Alright, so kneaded butter. If we consult the joy of cooking, I feel like this is one of those Monty Python moments where they consult the Book of Armaments. Except for my Book of Armaments is the joy of cooking. Alright, so kneaded butter, we're going to just be taking a couple tablespoons of softened butter, so we're going to need about 1 to 1.5 tablespoons of oil. So we're going to take about a tablespoon of butter, soften it, and then a tablespoon of flour. And we're going to work those together and get them to kind of combine. So to do this, we're going to need some unsalted butter here. Let me grab a knife for that unsalted butter. I've got flour up there already. I'm going to set this aside for a moment. I'm going to bring our flour back down. And I'm just going to grab a little ramekin to do this in. Get about a tablespoon there. I'm going to toss this in the microwave for just a second to soften it. Just about probably 10 seconds. While that softens, I'm going to make sure that my tablespoon is rinsed out so that I can use it to grab flour here. I know I normally do everything by weight, but for something as small as a tablespoon of flour, it doesn't matter too much. I could probably judge it by eye as well, but it seems just as easy to do it by volume. And provided I'm careful, it'll be close enough to accurate that it doesn't really matter. All right. Well, that's not softened enough. Toss that in there for another 15 seconds. Grab, that's approximately a tablespoon because I know it's condensed down a little bit. Alright, that's better. We're going to take this. Just going to dump that in there. Very gently because this is warm and I don't want to hurt myself, but I'm just going to kind of mix these up. Try make sure that everything is all fully incorporated. Try to get rid of this little piece of butter there. Alright. So that is kneaded butter. I may have slightly over softened the butter, but it doesn't really matter in this particular context. So we're just going to take that butter and we're going to drop it into, we're going to whisk that into the stew, where whisking is basically just mixing it in carefully. Probably will help if I swap over the camera view. Alrighty. Probably a better utensil I can use other than my finger. You know, something like a spatula or something like that. We're just going to get that fully incorporated into here. This is also the point where we're going to pull out our bay leaves. We have 2 of them in there. So that's 1. Now we just need to find the second one. There it is. Both bay leaves have been successfully removed. And that should be pretty good to release that little shininess, and it thickens it slightly as we stir it. We can see that it is, well, I can see that it's thickening. Not sure too how well that comes across on the camera. That means that that should be just about good for us. That should be our stew. I think it's time to grab a nice bowl, figure out where I put my ladle, which is essentially directly in front of my face in the drawer. I was never very good at finding things that were directly in front of me. A nice helping of those carrots in there as well. I'm going to put this over here on the cutting board and swap my view back over. So that is our stew, which is going to go really well with our biscuits. And I'm thinking that probably also some of that French bread will go really well with this. That's nice and crusty. The biscuits are still warm. I'm probably going to pop them in the oven again at a low heat just to make sure that they are indeed nice and fresh, and kind of refresh them. But I think that generally speaking, that's going to be our stew. So I'm thinking a fork for this to get started. See how the biscuits turned out. Yeah, that's pretty good. See how the vegetables turned out. Yeah, those carrots are just full of flavor and really work well. I think maybe a touch of salt would be good. So yeah, I think it's really hot in the center. All right, I think yeah, just a touch of salt would be good on this. I'll toss a little bit more in the main mixture, but overall, I think I'm pretty happy with this. This came out pretty good. It tastes great. And I think I'm going to probably go and enjoy this. So thank you guys for hanging out. Yeah, that's pretty good with that little bit of extra salt. So I'm going to go ahead and enjoy this. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. Hope you all have a fantastic week. We start another one. And I will see you all on Wednesday. All right. Thanks.